In January, there was an invitation for clergy to go to Minneapolis to take a moral stand against ICE. Feeling an internal call, I went. I arrived in Minneapolis in late afternoon on a Wednesday. Thursday morning, on a patrol as a legal observer, I encountered a dozen masked ICE agents terrorizing a pregnant Latina mother and her child. Last Sunday, I spoke in depth about this. It was the longest sermon I have ever given. I don't think anyone was tired, though, after it. It was 34 minutes. This sermon won't be 34 minutes, but I only got up to about Thursday at noon. So I want to tell you some other stories and other experiences I had when I was there. For 3 nights, we had the hospitality of a UU couple that lived in a suburb of Minneapolis. They were parents of one of Reverend Douglas's, my traveling partner. They were parents of one of Reverend Douglas's congregants, Carrie. Reverend Douglas and I shared a bathroom, and the first morning I woke up early to take a shower, and I heard him get up first, and he went into the bathroom, and it was a very short experience in the bathroom, and I expected it to be longer and hear the shower run, but it wasn't, but he came out quicker than I expected, and so I went in after he left to take a shower, and I couldn't figure out how to turn the shower on. And I was afraid to pull any harder than I was pulling, and that it might break. So I knocked on Douglas's room. "Can I help you?" he said. "Yeah, I can't turn on the shower. Can you tell me how to turn it on?" He's like, "Oh, I couldn't either, but I thought you would figure it out." It was really, really early in the morning, about 6 a.m., and we didn't want to wake up our hosts, who were elderly and partially disabled. So Reverend Douglas texted Carrie, his congregant, back in Binghamton, New York, "How do you turn on the shower?" She assured us, "You have to pull it, but pull it hard." So I pulled, and oof, the water came out, as it should. However, it was stuck on cold. The plastic handle's mechanism was cracked and stripped. I told Douglas, and I went into the bathroom, and I went into the bathtub, and I said, "Douglas, what I really need is a pliers and a Phillips screwdriver." He immediately opened the top drawer of the vanity, and lo and behold, a pliers and a Phillips screwdriver. We looked at each other with amazement. Then Douglas responded, "Well, hey, we're in Minnesota," as if this is what people in Minnesota have in their drawers. I was able to fix it, and we had hot showers. During one of the training sessions that day, an indigenous spiritual leader told us repeatedly, "We are all related." He told us if there's moments in the days ahead where we get caught in fear or anxiety or anger or aggression, remember, we are all related. So I invite you to turn to the person next to you and say, "We are all related." I invite you to look around this room. See all our relations. We are all truly related. He explained to us that the land surrounding where the Minnesota River meets the Mississippi River is called Badote. It's the sacred center of the Dakota homeland and the traditional site of their emergence. A treaty was signed there. Fort Snelling is located there, which later became a concentration camp for the Dakota who surrendered to the U.S. military after the Dakota War of 1862. Eventually, they were all forcibly exiled from Minnesota. And now, just blocks away from Fort Snelling is the Whipple Center, where immigrants, including some indigenous people, are being rounded up and sent to who knows where. The leader talked about epigenetic trauma, how the terror of his ancestors affected their DNA and they passed it on down to him and others and so on and so forth. But if all of that is true, he said, then we also inherited epigenic resistance. That afternoon, there were some options. If you were willing to risk arrest, leave the sanctuary where we were and board a bus and head towards First Universalist for more training. Having just witnessed those dozen masked ICE agents, I looked at Reverend Douglas and I said, I need to go. Then he said, then I will accompany you. The streets were narrow for a large tour bus to get down, and at one point the driver just opened the door and told us it would be faster if you just got out and walked. I had been a pulpit guest at First Universalist many years ago, so I was familiar with the building and where it was, and it was a beautiful old former synagogue. As we entered the building, a bunch of people were turning off their cell phones and leaving them in clear plastic containers at the door. There were rumors that we were going to try and shut down the Minneapolis airport. No one must leak what was happening. We waited to go through this makeshift security in a long line that went all the way into their RE wing. And then after maybe 15 minutes of just the line not moving, all of a sudden we were allowed to go into the sanctuary. There were all these questions that ministers were asking. Will we get arrested for sure, or is it just a high risk? Will we be arrested by ICE or local police? What will we get arrested for? If we go on the tarmac, isn't that a federal offense? What will happen to us after we get arrested? How long will we be held for? Will we be able to catch our flights back? The organizers decided to change. They could only guarantee legal counsel for 100 local clergy. Plans were changing and new adaptations were being made in real time. We were going to bear witness to the local clergy getting arrested. Then there, in this same sanctuary, there was this nonviolence training. Has anyone ever gone to nonviolence training? Some of you had. So they asked for a group of 6 or 7 clergy to come forward, and they came forward here, and they're like, all right, we need another 6 or 7 clergy. And those 6 or 7 clergy were to hurl insults at them with the most anger and fury that you can imagine. And they did that. They did a really good job of that. But the 6 or 7 first group of clergy, they were just calm and peaceful. And to witness that, it gave a lot of confidence in that we could do the same thing. We were taught some of the theory of nonviolent resistance that was based on some of Eric Chenoweth's work. There was an image that appeared projected above a triangle image of like a roof. And then below that were 5 Greek columns or pillars. The triangular roof simply had on it regime. The pillar represented other important parts of society like media, corporations, religion, courts, civil servants. The corporate pillar is the one most critical and easiest to move, they said. They were getting specific and were going to focus on the business community in the Twin Cities. A general strike was planned for the next day, and hundreds of businesses were going to close. The goal was a large, diverse participation to defend democracy. They felt they could sway specifically Delta Airlines and Target. One pillar that falls could bring down the whole regime. Unitarian Universalist clergy stayed at First Universalist for dinner that night. Dozens of volunteers warmed food up and made us just feel welcome and hospitable, and they were very hospitable. Other ministers arrived, and I found out that others went on a pilgrimage to Renee Good's memorial and George Floyd's memorial. ICE followed them in a bus, in an unmarked vehicle, down the narrow streets of icy, frozen Minneapolis. 2 young women followed the ICE agents. At some point, the ICE agents stopped and demanded that they open their windows, the 2 young women who were following the ICE agents. When they didn't, ICE shattered their window, glass cutting into the driver's face. I couldn't believe it. This was happening, but I saw videos of it. Another group went to tour a church that created a huge and efficient system of delivering food to people who were too afraid to leave their houses. ICE agents were soon spotted in the parking lot, and the whole campus went on lockdown. Clergy were scared, but for the employees of that church, it was just another day. During dinner, the UUA president, Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, spoke some impromptu words in which I cannot remember, but what I remember is the feeling of those words. The feeling of those words were for freedom and love and solidarity. And at one point, she asked everyone there to look around the room. And we looked around the room, and all of us just started crying. Dinner was followed by worship. The next morning, we woke and we had hot showers without any issues. The house began to smell like fried bacon, and I had for breakfast 2 eggs and toast. Our host then drove us to a gas station on a 6-lane highway to catch a bus. And I kid you not, within seconds, the bus pulled up and we got on. Again, I didn't have exact change, and the bus driver offered us a free ride, but I insisted and I put a $5 bill on. I remember specifically Douglas looking at his app, his weather app, and it was negative 18 degrees. The express bus took us downtown, and then we took the light rail. And once at the airport, we weren't sure where to go. Police officers were blocking off parts of the airport, and they told us to use the escalator to go to the Delta terminal. There were union-led organizers there telling us to keep moving and how to not violate loitering laws. I remember seeing 4 or 5 school buses parked there and yellow barricades. Police were in riot gear, a few dressed in camouflage, armed with these tear gas canister guns. I quickly realized that this whole protest was highly staged, and local police were informed about it. After maybe 30 minutes of marching along the sidewalk at the airport, 100 clergy went into the road and started singing, and we all joined them. Police with bullhorns warned us, "Get out of the road or risk getting arrested." Douglas and I went onto the sidewalk. And I must say, even with these foot warmers in my boots, I was afraid I might lose my toes because of the bitter cold, and we took a break to go inside the airport to warm up. And when we came out, we saw a line of about 100 clergy kneeling and praying. Could you show that slide? The police started arresting the clergy, zip-tying their hands together, and Reverend Oscar Sinclair, the UU minister who had just welcomed us to dinner at Unitarian in St. Paul the night before, on Wednesday evening, got arrested. You can go to the next picture. Go to the next one. There. Can't really tell it's him, but it's him. You can see his yellow hat says love on it. Then a minister that I had befriended, Reverend Shana, her wife got arrested. And I later found out that they were given $200 trespassing tickets and were released within 2 hours. Go to the next picture. And there's Douglas in the middle and me at that. All right, you can go to the blank slide. The plan, and then all of a sudden, that was over. What should we do next? Well, we checked our Signal Chat app, and the clergy were invited to an action downtown. So we got on the light rail and noticed a bunch of people with yellow stoles on that same light rail train. You can go to that slide. They were UUs, most from the Boston area. One was from San Diego, and one was a trustee on the UUA board. Okay. The plan was to get to the flagship Target store in downtown Minneapolis and demand that they close in solidarity with the general strike and to put out a statement condemning the ICE violence. Once in the Target, we noticed a line to use the bathroom, and it was full of Unitarian Universalist ministers. We were to walk around as if we were customers and pretend to buy things, and then at a certain time meet in the rotunda entrance. And I remember seeing someone I went to seminary with in the aisle to buy like fingernail clippers. "Oh, good to see you. What are you shopping for?" I jokingly said. And then it was time. We started walking to the entrance and singing No One Is Gonna Get Left Behind, the song we're gonna sing after this sermon. Security didn't want us to block the escalator, but then so many people were there, the security guard just ended up giving up. So you can go to the next picture. You can kind of see the security guard with her hand kind of like, oh boy. And there's a rabbi there that's holding a sign that says this rabbi loves immigrants. A Lutheran pastor spoke, the kind of person who's in the center there, and there's the bigger picture of what was going on. A Lutheran pastor spoke with a big booming sort of Germanic voice. The Roman Catholic archbishop spoke with a feeble and frail voice. I yelled to him, "Use your preacher's voice!" They asked Target not to cooperate with ICE. You say you are a family-friendly business? Now be a family-friendly business to all. Within hours, that store closed. I had gotten separated. You can go to the blank slide. I got separated from Reverend Douglas, and as people left, I found him, and uncertain to do next, we saw just a block in front of us a huge protest march that was going on. And we formed a pod with 5 other ministers, and we decided we were going to stick together. This march had like 60 to 70,000 people in it, and the streets and the sidewalks were just full. If you go to the next picture. And next picture. Oops. There we go. So we use some of these classic call and response chants that maybe you're familiar with. Someone would shout, "Whose streets?" and we would say, "Our streets." So let's try that. Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. And there was another one that was a classic one. Someone says, "Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like." But the most common chant, which I won't fully articulate from this pulpit today, was F ICE, ICE out. So I'll go F ICE, ICE out. F ICE, ICE out. F ICE, ICE out. As near the end of the march, our pod stood on a corner and sang and gave blessings and well wishes to all the marchers going by. You can go to the blank slide now. Our pod, which we affectionately named "Our Pod is an Awesome Pod," went into a nearby building to warm up, and we formed a circle and just shared our experiences and what we were feeling, and we just prayed for each other. I had met these people from around the country just hours ago, and I could feel how related we were. We went to a rally with speakers, and then we got a ride back to First Universalist for dinner. I sat at a round table with colleagues, one of which I went to seminary with, the Reverend Jim Fody, and he lived in the Twin Cities. He looked around at this round table of beloved colleagues, and his tears came down. He was just so grateful we were there. And he said, "Anytime you need anything, I will come too." And then there was this powerful worship service. We just sang songs for an hour and a half. And one of those ones was, "Ain't nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. The president ain't gonna let the president turn me around, turn me around, turn me around, ain't gonna let the president turn me around, I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land." We just held each other in the spirit and felt this immeasurable presence. People were raising their arms like this. These are Unitarian Universalists. These raising their arms like this. It was such a draining, emotionally charged day, but to end it in the healing power of worship made us all feel so full. The next morning, which was Saturday, Douglas and I took an early Uber to the airport. Our flight from Minneapolis to Philadelphia, which was then supposed to go to Syracuse, was delayed. But there were 6 or 7 other colleagues also on this delayed flight, and we were just so joyous and full of laughter, and had so much fun just sharing stories, and it felt like we had actually made a difference. And as we boarded the plane, we got a safety alert on our signal apps. Federal immigration agents had just shot an observer. Our hearts sank. They asked for clergy to stay to help keep the peace. And we thought for a moment to stay, but we had just sat down in our seats on the plane. We had a first-hand witness testimony from a colleague of ours, the Reverend Lucas Hergert, in our signal chat. He wrote, "ICE boxed us in and we are crowded into a local store. We can't leave even if we want to, and waiting for them to break the windows to take us. They executed someone for observing their activities. They are sending buses to arrest us and prepping rubber bullets, deploying tear gas, beating us with truncheons. They are domestic terrorists. This is America now," he wrote at about 9 a.m. that Saturday. In the Philadelphia airport, we sat down to eat lunch and learned that Alex Preddy had died. Another martyr. I couldn't help but think it could have been me. And all the while, Trump administration was calling him a domestic terrorist, but we knew otherwise. We had firsthand testimony. And all I wanted to do was return back to Minneapolis and be with all my relations. I later heard stories of UU ministers going to the Alex Preddy Memorial and just being a presence, singing and praying with grieving strangers, in the middle of the street. The next day, CNN emailed me requesting an interview, and then a couple of local news places here. What I witnessed is ICE was not enforcing laws. They were the ruthless aggressors. To counter this, Minneapolis built deep, resilient relationships. Now, there was a whole lot of planning in a short amount of time, and they had to keep changing their plans. They embraced and creatively worked with what was thrown at them. And from fixing the shower to being comfortable without having any firm plans, we too were living out an emergent strategy. Recently, top Republican officials advised lawmakers in a private meeting to stay away from discussing mass deportations. It turns out the majority of Americans don't want that. Trump's immigration crackdown has alienated voters. Even Trump has recently steered clear of some of his harshest language. Renee Good and Alex Preddy did not die in vain. Nonviolent, resisted, rooted in deep relationship works. As the regime shifts its tactics, so must we. We must be creative. And at this particular time, where needless wars and repugnant death are filling the news, we need to adapt and change and be grounded in the fact that we are all related. All that we touch, we potentially change. All that we change potentially changes us. The one lasting truth is change. God is infinite potential. God is change. So may it be, and amen.